to talk to you is the chairman of our search committee, Charlie Whitaker.
Father Mark, you asked too many questions. I would first like to thank Peggy and Harry and the transition committee that was put together this summer and the vestry for assembling a terrific group of parishioners to serve on our search committee. We are very well aligned and are working together well in making very good progress towards our goal of calling the next rector of St. James's. So I want to take a few minutes to take you through our work to date, what we've learned from the parish, how that has informed who we are looking for, where we are in the process, and our timeline. So far since we formed at the beginning of September, we've had 11 or 12 committee meetings, plus extensive time, at least as much time or more, outside of those meetings, listening to the parish, preparing our community ministry portfolio, and talking to potential candidates as they discern, just like Father Shuford, whether to apply. We started last September by developing a clear set of operating principles that our committee was going to follow, and I wanted to share there are several, but there are four that are really important that I want to share with the parish. The first is we will let the Holy Spirit guide us in this process. We are not just hiring the next rector, we are calling someone to join our family. So that means being clear on the criteria we're looking for and going through a very objective, careful process, but also pausing and listening to the Holy Spirit to understand, is this someone we want to join our family? Does it feel right for us based on where we want to go? Second, we are clear as a committee that we act as one team. We are not 12 representatives of 12 different constituencies in the parish. We're one group that represents the entire parish. Our third principle follows from that, and is that our goal is to have our recommendation to the vestry be unanimous. 100% support of the search committee. In order to do that, our third principle is that we will trust each other, we will be inclusive, and we will respect differences. The only way all of us are going to get 100% behind our recommendation, even if that person may not be our personal first choice, is for us to listen to each other, to respect differences, to make sure everyone on the committee feels that their voice is heard and can get behind the process. And then the fourth principle that may not be too satisfactory to the people here is that the committee will maintain strict confidentiality during the deliberations process. We've been very open so far in how we're going about it, but we are now talking to folks and deliberating, and we are talking to folks who are very beloved where they are, who are very happy where they are, and it would not be fair to them to get out that they are looking at St. James's. So as I've said, in order to be clear that we're representing the entire parish and that the call of our next rector will be based on what we discern is in the best interest of the entire parish, we spent the entire fall listening to the parish to make sure we could be clear on how we present St. James's to our candidates, our priorities as a parish going forward, and the gifts and qualities we need in our next rector. So we did 11, I think, listening sessions with different small groups, different ministries across the parish. And with all of these, we really wanted to hear about how you would, what our strengths are, what our opportunities are, and what we should be looking for in our next rector. So 11 listening sessions. We got hundreds of parishioners give us input on those three things through emails to the search committee, through these index cards we had at the feast. We collected all of that to really understand what the parish was telling us. And if you were at the adult forum in November, you saw the results of that with some word clouds and that sort of thing. And then we did a parish-wide survey that had an excellent response rate, as I'll say more about in a minute. All this listening and discernment culminated in a succinct 6-page document called a Community Ministry Portfolio. That is what's out there on the National Transition Database. It describes who St. James's is, what our biggest opportunities are, and what we are looking for in our next rector. That's the primary document this national candidate pool is looking at to discern whether they feel called to St. James's. And that's important because this process is not just us calling the next rector. It's really about our next rector somewhere out there feeling called to us based on what he or she knows about St. James's and reads about St. James's in this document. And I also want to thank Russell Lawson for putting together an excellent resource. If you go to the Rector Search Committee, you will see a page on doers.org with resources. Our candidates can go to this page and see videos and read our strategic plan and see the centennial videos and lots of other information. I'd encourage you to go there and see it. I've talked to many candidates who have been out there looking at these resources, and it does help them to feel called to us. We're going to send out a summary of what we learned from the survey, but I want to share a few highlights here because I think it's interesting and it's important to our search. First, thank you for responding to the survey. It wasn't short. It took 20 minutes. I will tell you we had a 93% response rate, over 500 people. So, thank you very much. 517 responses. That gives us very high confidence we understand the views of the parish. It's really remarkable. And we're only using a consultant for one part of this process, and that was for this survey. And she said that is an excellent response rate, and it shows the health of this parish. The reason we used a third party for this survey is it allows us to benchmark against hundreds or thousands of other parishes across the country against our survey results and to know how we stand. A key measure of this survey was our level of energy and satisfaction at St. James's. So 75% of our parishioners are clearly satisfied with their experience at St. James's. Only 2% of respondents disagreed that they were satisfied with their experience at St. James's. The others are in the middle. That's very high relative to the benchmark. So that's satisfaction. In terms of energy, the response was even higher on the benchmark, very high relative to other churches. 65% feel energized by the work and ministry at St. James's, and only 3% feel that we just go through the motions of church activity. So you take energy, you take satisfaction. Imagine a 4-quadrant grid, right? You could have low energy and low satisfaction. That's a church that needs to reinvent itself. You could have high satisfaction but low energy, but that's kind of stagnation. You could have high energy, low satisfaction. That's a lot of activity, but it's chaos. It's not pointed in a direction. That's a church struggling to find its direction. Well, we're not in any of those quadrants. We're in high energy, high satisfaction. In fact, we are in the top right of that quadrant. Excellent. This is what our candidates are going to see about us, and that was very helpful to us as a search committee because it says our next rector doesn't need to focus on repairing things or fixing things or re-energizing the place. We need to focus on further directing the energies of this church towards further growth. So the survey then went on to ask parishioners, where should we devote additional energies in our parish? So I'll share the top 4 of what you said we need to focus additional energies. The first was growth, a strategy to reach new people and incorporate them into the life of our church. It's kind of average. Typically, that's a top priority. Our second highest priority, though, was very high relative to the benchmark. Most churches don't have that, and it ties into what Wilson was just saying. The second highest priority among our parishioners is to develop the spiritual generosity to financially support our ministries. And actually, the survey showed that our average level of giving relative to self-disclosed household income is pretty low relative to other parishes. Third biggest priority is to develop ministries that work toward healing those broken by life circumstances. And the fourth is to work to renew and revitalize the community right around us by building coalitions with partners. It helps us understand the kind of rector we're looking for. So all this data, we will share a summary. It's sorted by demographics, and it's very helpful. There were 2 concerns that came out of the survey that I will share briefly. First, I was surprised to see that relative to the benchmark, we're only in the 31st percentile on hospitality. We're a very welcoming church. We're a very friendly church. But in terms of actually feeling that our church welcomes and is enriched by people from different walks of life, we're relatively low. So we welcome people into our doors. It's about plugging them in and respecting and valuing all the differences in our community right around us. The second, quite frankly, concern is our readiness for this transition. There was a question on the survey. I am comfortable with the timing of this pastoral transition and feel that it's time for change. Only 26% of our respondents agreed with that. That's 11th percentile among thousands of churches going through transition. What that says to us is, first, everyone loved Randy. It also says if we were to call a rector today, our church, our parish might struggle a bit to get behind his or her leadership. So actually, this timing during this transition is very important for us to be prepared for the next rector. It would be a mistake to have our next rector step in this pulpit right now because all of us would be comparing him or her to Randy right away. So we hope to have the next rector in this pulpit by the fall, but that period of about a year is important for us to embrace this next person. By the way, when asked, should the next rector have the same skills and responsibilities as Randy, 74% strongly agreed with that. If you include the 10 to agrees, it's 96%, which put us in the 98th percentile of churches. So I sent Randy a note and thanked him for making our job impossible. Finally, with the critical abilities we're looking for, our parish wants first and foremost preaching, second strategic leadership, third pastoral care, and fourth administration. All of this listening and discernment told the search committee there are 4 criteria that we're looking for in our next rector. A vibrant and inspiring preacher. These words are important. It's what is in our portfolio that the rectors and candidates are reading. Vibrant and inspiring preacher, warm and approachable pastor, masterful leader, administrator, and mentor. You need to want to raise money and be energized about administering a large church with cracked steeples and so forth. And fourth, be spiritually grounded. That's what we are using to find our next rector. So, where are we? We are in the search part of the phase, after the planning phase. Our window has been open. It is closing March 10th so far. Excluding Father Shuford, we've had about 15 or 16 applicants, and we expect several more before the window closes. Because in addition to those who have actually applied, we have a running list now of about 50 people we are working from because, frankly, the best people out there aren't looking. They're happy where they are. They're still challenged where they are. They're still growing. So we realize if many people aren't actively looking, we need to be actively recruiting. So we started getting referrals. So we have about 50 names we're working from that are referrals from the parish, referrals from other priests, and referrals from divinity schools and people we've identified ourselves. And we are contacting these folks. Many of them are happy where they are and they still have work to do, but some are discerning whether to apply. Some aren't a good fit at all. But we are out there actively recruiting. Suzanne and Hillary and Peggy were at the big SEEP conference this week, and Chip Woodson and I went as well. This is the Consortium of Endowed Episcopal Parishes, the largest convention of Episcopal churches in the country. It was up in D.C. We were there this week. Chip Woodson and I probably talked to over a dozen candidates who had either applied or are discerning whether to apply. This thing was like just, it was nonstop talking to people the whole time we were there. It was such a blessing that this was happening during our search. We met at length over the last 2 days with 6 candidates. Not an interview, and many of these people hadn't applied, but they were names that were given to us and who aren't necessarily looking. And I'll tell you, this has been valuable. There was one person I was talking to for about 30 minutes. He said, "I'm happy to talk to you, happy to try to help, but I'm not looking. I'm happy where I am." I said, "That's okay." And we talked. And the conversation, in the course of 30 minutes, went from, let me think of people, to, now, tell me about the schools in your area and how my family and I fit in. So this is somebody who may have shifted during that conversation and actually apply. So I'll close by saying, in terms of timing, where are we? We hope to call our next rector sometime this summer with the hope that they could start around Labor Day. But quality is more important than speed, and as I say, the survey said we need this time to prepare ourselves for our next minister. We will be in a quiet phase. We will not be telling you who we are talking to. If you hear rumors that we're talking to so-and-so or considering so-and-so, you have my assurance those rumors did not come from the search committee because we have taken a vow of confidentiality. Finally, I want to thank you all very much for responding to the survey. You may remember at the feast I I asked for two things. I asked to give us your input, and I asked to please pledge. And everyone stepped up. I don't take credit for the pledging, but it is a gift to this search that we had such a high response rate and that we grew our stewardship by 3% during a period when we did not have a full-time rector. So with that, I will not take up time to take questions here, but I will stick around to answer questions afterward. So thank you very much.